Hello, this will be just a brief model tour, a tour of modeling. The thing we see on top is, of course, BB-8 from Star Wars. And this would be a model. You can buy these, right? Model of the actual BB-8, let's just say, or, the larger BB-8. Sometimes, when you're looking at some of these, you don't know whether, computer graphics is so good today that you don't know whether it's a digital model or physical. I imagine you can have both for a BB-8. A couple of things that are important is that a model is either a model of something. So you might say a tennis ball is a model of the sun because it's got the same rough shape as the sun, even though it doesn't really have it doesn't model anything else, just the shape. Model 4, though, is different, and we'll see a couple examples of Model 4. Again, model, what is it? It's a simplified representation. That's simple. So this is a kind of classic model. We'll call it human model, fashion model in this particular case. You've got a couple of people, and what they're doing is they're modeling clothing. They're modeling perhaps the way that the hair is done, and the idea is that companies and designers and so on may take this as an idea. If these guys are on the runway, or they've got a photograph like this, they are models for a new clothing that's yet to be created or designed, right? So it's a model for, not a model of something. And but it's a classic kind of modeling. This is a models that were in the Kimball Museum in Fort Worth, and I visited, I think, in 2013 or 2014. This is done by an artist, Bernini, and Bernini did a lot of so-called terracotta sculptures, terracotta models, and these are another examples of Model 4, because when Bernini would create something like this is actually clay. I know it looks, you go, man, it looks like marble or some other stone, but you can see from the crack right up here and so on, some of the cracks, and it's a very, very well done model, but it's a model for what Bernini was then going to sculpt later in stone. Okay, so simplified representation, absolutely. Model 4, yes, in this case, just like the fashion models. This is a toy truck. You played with toys. I played with toys. Everyone has, and the toys are generally scale models of things that are used. We usually to do storytelling, right? We tell stories as kids and hopefully as adults. And as kids, we use these as kind of props to tell our story. What's important is that, if you were to go into a model store, a store that sells models, usually they're talking about models of trains, models of ships, maybe this kind of model too, but trains and vehicles are very popular in a store, a modeling store. And sometimes you will go to a toy store and you will find these same models. This is a model of a village in the United Kingdom and the village is called Burton on the Water. And as you can imagine, Burton on the Water, yes, it's on the water. It's like Stratford on Avon. Avon is a river in the UK. That area is, Shakespeare's home territory. And, this is Burton on the water, and it's clearly a smaller, this is a village, and it's a scale village that you can actually, pay a little bit of money and go inside and tour around, just walk around. Looks like this person is taking a picture of one of the, model houses. Very interesting. And of course, what's sort of interesting too, and you can't see it here, is that there's an example of recursion in this model village. And the recursion, it just simply means that if this is a model village, is a model of the actual village called Burton on the Water, if that's true, then there must be a model inside the model, right? Because there's a model inside of Burton on the Water. And there's about 3 or 4 different levels of recursion that are present. So if you go to the place where the model is with respect to the town or the village, you can see that. It's kind of interesting. Oh, by the way, with all of these, there are these links below. So please feel free to click on these to get additional information. This is a model of the Mississippi River. It's actually called the Mississippi River Basin Model. Is it used today? I think it still is in use, although admittedly with the computers getting faster and faster, and with more storage, and with the advance of computer graphics, a lot of simulation has turned in the last, let's say 40 or 50 years, to the use of digital computers. But it's important to note that models exist outside of computers and always have, right? And so you will find a lot of examples of physical models like this. This is a mouse model. So the mouse is often used because it's similar DNA-wise and in terms of physiology to the human. And often things are done to mice, which, again, this is an ethics thing. We may approve or disapprove of this. But independent of that, this, in medicine, the term model is used frequently to talk about an animal model for testing for purposes of understanding human anatomy and understanding the effects of drugs and so on. This is a model used in the film called Sticky within ATEC. This is part of the animation group, and it's a great film. Most of the stuff they put out is really good. It's sort of Pixar quality. And I would recommend you look up Sticky and take a look at it. But this is a model of a chameleon, and it's all done in computer graphics. Long ago would have been physical. This is true with the models that were used to create in cinema. They were physical, like the original Star Wars movie. The models tended to be physical. They were huge structures, right? I mean, not as huge as the things they were modeling, but this is all computer graphics. And speaking of Star Wars, this is an example of the Millennium Falcon that was used to promote the movie. So it was used as a prop in cinemas. With all this talk of modeling, if we kind of go backwards a little bit in time and we think about language, natural language, like English, for example, things that are described in English can often be models of things, because they usually are. I could describe the truck that we saw earlier, or any other object or scene. And in fact, my writing, when I describe that, my writing is a form of modeling, right? And so writing and drawing are primitive, important, essential methods for modeling, which are often not talked about as models. But this is a modeling class, so I'm saying that they are models. They are simplified representations of things. Speaking of things, the Eiffel Tower. Or speaking of things, you have caves. In this case, Caesar, this is a model of a pig right here. This is interesting because it's a fairly recent discovery, and it's been in the news over the last few weeks. If you looked up pig cave early art or something like that, you probably would find articles on it. Very interesting. Roughly 70,000 years old, approximately. And this is also old, although I think I have it wrong here. It's not 70,000. The Ashango bone is if you had to give a topic, it's mathematics, right? It's numbers. So these notches in here are models of something. Anthropologists think it's probably the lunar cycle. If you click on this URL right here, you'll get more information about the Ashango bone. And there are other bones. There's one called the Lubombo bone. And these are sort of, you categorize them in a modern sense as mathematics. Where just like if you go to a cave painting in a modern sense, you would say, well, that's art. It's not as if art really existed 70,000 years ago. I mean, they didn't have or mathematics for that matter, they were just representing, they were modeling, right? Independent of what we would end up calling it later. JSON is a classic method for modeling information. So this is a model of John Smith. And it's something that you may have seen if you look up JSON. This is information about Jason. So it says the first name, last name, he's alive, 27, he's got some phone numbers, he's got an address, no partner, no children. So that's what this model tells us about John. So again, great way of thinking about modeling. In this case, modeling knowledge, modeling information, right? You're not modeling a process here. You're modeling John Smith, and you're modeling information about John. There's a concept map. Concept maps are represented by concepts in ellipses and relations or linking phrases that are on arrows. You can actually read them. You could say electricity is a form of energy, for example. And often you can read the rest of the concept map in that fashion. We used concept maps last semester. We may use them this semester as well. This is a finite state machine, which is used in software engineering, which also can be used to model virtually any process in a discrete fashion. And we'll be talking about this when we talk about UML. This is a model of business process. So unlike something like software engineering, this isn't a model of software, it's a model of people doing something in a complex organization. This is a mathematical model. We usually think about the Fibonacci numbers or the Fibonacci sequence. Well, it turns out it was a model of growth of, I think, rabbits. And so when people talk about mathematical model, they use that term. It usually means that they're using mathematical notation. It's often that many things are actual mathematical models. But if you happen to represent that model and you present and represent it using symbols from modern mathematics, then it's called a mathematical model. This is a Petri Net, something we'll go over later, good in modeling concurrent processes. This is a gear train that you'll find in any analog clock. In fact, it was it's part of the Prague clock, the astronomical clock that I mentioned in the syllabus. Model theory is part of logic, mathematical logic, and you'll find it taught either in philosophy or mathematics. And you can look at this in more detail.